Praise God. Praise God. I really like having the opportunity to give my testimony. Each time I do, it brings to mind, some of the people that I used to sort of roll with. And, a lot of those people, don't have the opportunity to be here. Some of those people are either dead or in prison serving very long prison sentences. And I know that if it wasn't for the Lord, I wouldn't be here today to be able to give my testimony. So, God gets all the glory, and for that is what really gives me the passion to be able to just share my testimony and my life, and to show that Jesus is still alive, and that the power of God is what we need to depend on to transform lives, and many broken lives out there. And my life really started with I was brought up as a single parent family. It was my mother bringing us up, 3 children. I was the oldest of 3. And so I took a lot of responsibility in that family, really taking on the sort of father figure role. At the time, it was just natural for me, just taking up that role and taking that sort of responsibility. Looking back, I can see that I was under quite a lot of pressure, but at the time it was just great. I was earning my own sort of pocket money by the age of 13. I wouldn't even ask for pocket money. I'd be out there doing 2 or 3 different paper rounds, and I'd get my brother and sister ready for school, and take them to school and pick them up and bring them back, and it was just part of my life. That's just the way I was. But when I look back, I just think, wow, I took a lot of responsibility on back in those sort of early days. At school, ended up getting involved in lots of fights. I suppose it was just a real frustration of life and having that responsibility, not having that father figure in my life. And inevitably, I started to move around and with other people, other older guys who were involved in drugs and crime. And I started taking cannabis from an early age, from about the age of 13, 14. I was smoking cannabis on a regular basis. That escalated to harder drugs, got involved in ecstasy, cocaine, and I was very much involved in the rave scene, and involved in gangs as well. And the whole thing with the gang culture started off really wanting to be like that gang leader, and so joining the gang, and started wanting to prove myself, and then eventually leaving that gang and kind of forming my own gang. So I was then the leader of that gang, and we were actually based down here in Brixton. I wasn't even living in Brixton at the time. I was actually living kind of just outside of Peckham, near East Dulwich. That's where I used to live. But no one used to know where I lived. As far as everybody was concerned, I lived in Brixton. It wasn't until we was actually arrested together, and then they all realised where I lived, and they said, "Oh, I didn't know you lived in Dulwich." They all assumed that I lived in Brixton. So because at the time, I was also involved a lot around girls, and, so I had a couple of girlfriends who lived in Brixton. So as far as they were concerned, that's where I was. And we got involved in robberies. Was involved in robberies of post offices and security vans. Got involved in drug trafficking. Spent actually went to prison 3 times in my life. Been arrested many times, and the first 2 times I went to prison, it really didn't have a great effect on me. The first time, obviously, it was a frightening experience, and prison is no deterrent. You've got 60% of people who actually go to prison and come out, go back into prison again. And when you and with the young people who go to our prisons, 80%, so you're talking about 8 in every 10 young people, when they come out of prison, go back. So that shows you that the prison is no deterrent whatsoever, and it was no deterrent for me. Once I was actually used to that whole prison culture and life, and I look at the prison culture very much, and I look at the culture on our streets and in our schools, and it's a similar kind of culture. You know, when you're in prison, you know, you have to have that front, you have to act as if you're dangerous, you have to be that person that everybody else fears so that you don't become a victim. And that's the same kind of culture that I see, actually even in our schools now, you know, which is frightening to realise that, you know, kids are going to school and that's how they have to behave so that they don't end up being victims. That is the kind of behaviour that you learn when you're in prison. You go to prison to be rehabilitated, but then you have to act this way to survive, but that behaviour you bring back outside, and then when you come outside with it, that takes you back to prison, because you can't survive on the outside, that sort of behaviour. So, like I said, I went to prison 3 times, and you know, I was also very much involved in the occult. And because I was involved in drug trafficking in a really big way, it was you know, I had, on numerous occasions, I'd be carrying maybe 25 to 50,000 pounds in a bag just to do a drug deal. So obviously the person who I'm dealing with is coming with his gun, and you know, I have to come with mine. You know, everybody knows what the score is. You know, he's wondering if I'm going to come and rob him, and I'm wondering if he's going to come and rob me. So there's always that tension every time you're doing that drug deal. You know, it's funny that the other day I saw one of those guys that I used to do that sort of business with, and I had just my regular bag with me. You know, because back in those days I just carried a sports bag or a plastic bag with me, and that's what the money would be in. You know, when we was talking, I could see him every so often looking at my bag, you know, wondering, and I kept saying to him, I'm a Christian now, you know, I don't do those things anymore, but he kept looking at my bag, you know, I think he was wondering, you know, have I got a lot of money in there or a lot of drugs, you know, so, then that was one of the reasons why I then got involved in the occult, because I was actually got involved in it for protection.